Some said she was very outgoing, lovely, talkative, and adorable, but some had the impression of her being sassy, fickle-minded, and untrustworthy. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Min. The serial murder case I'm gonna talk about today, as I said in my previous video, is a woman. Unlike many cases of female homicide in which the women acted in self-defense or retaliation against domestic violence or long-term abuse, the main character we are talking about today actually gained a lot of love and favors, but she just wanted to kill. Today's case again had too few photos documents released. This was the only photo of Ma Yanhong, so I've used AI to reconstruct many things for the story. Let's go back in time and start the story today. Jiamusi City is in the Heilongjiang province in the northeast of China. It was in the beginning of September 1994. There were 2 bags of human legs pieces found by the Songhua River. When the local police were frowning about this report, there were more coming, saying that more human pieces were discovered about 5 miles range of these legs. Investigators were very worried when they pieced together all the body parts collected. The head of the corpse was nowhere to be found. The limbs were not complete either. They could barely tell that all these pieces belonged to 3 different people: 1 male, 1 woman, and a child. They didn't know where it happened, no information about the victims, and all these human pieces were scattered around by the river. In 1994, even developed Western countries had just begun to use DNA technology to support criminal investigation and had not yet fully established standardized DNA testing procedures and quality control systems. Needless to say, a remote small town in northeast China at that time. So the police at that time couldn't start their investigation at all. But only 9 months later, there were more human remains were found scattered around the rice fields, bridges, and the city of Jiamusi. Like in these 3 bodies above, the head was missing and it's only 2/3 of him was found. Within 9 months, so many human pieces were found, you can see how much stress the local police would have felt. Like it or not, they examined the last body thoroughly as it is the freshest, I guess. Its fingernails were brownish, which indicated that the victim could have been a smoker. His spine wasn't straight enough, it ended to an unhealthy arch, but his gluteus muscles were strong, which meant that he could have been working mostly in an office. According to the length between his toes to his hip, it's deduced that he could have been about 5'6" or 5'9", and he had some scars at his left wrist. So apart from the scars, the rest of the information could not narrow down the search at all. As in the northeast China, males around 5'9", smoking, working in an office. You can run into them like a dozen, if not more, when you were out and about, especially at night for barbecues. But the investigators thought of a genius idea to find out who was this victim. The Jiamusi City TV station kept looping a message to the public, saying that there's this man hit by vehicles and he was in resuscitation in the hospital. He was about 5'9" tall and strong. There were scars at his left wrist. Please call the number below if you have any information. Much appreciated. Not long did they wait, an old guy called to tell them that his son hadn't been visiting him for quite some time, and he had contacted his work and neighbors, but no one had seen him. His son, Dong Daqing, was 33 years old. He worked as judicial police. There are scars at his left wrist, which he got from his teenager years, from a random street fight. The investigators arrived at Dong Daqing's place, and with approval of his father, they broke into it. And they knew it right away that this was the crime scene. the moment they stepped into this. The room was in a mess with rat marks everywhere, and even fragments of bones and flesh were left. After testing, the blood signs at the crime scene matched Dong Da-qing. A policeman was actually hacked to death and dismembered in his own place. The police started the investigation from the victim's connections, and they admitted he had a girlfriend. According to the neighbors, her first names were Xiu-e, and from the father, he recorded that before his son went missing, he actually mentioned to him that there's this girl he recently met was really nice and he wanted to introduce her to his father. And according to the father, her family name was Ren. However, in Dong Da-qing's friend circles, there was no such person called Ren Xiu-e. The police didn't give up though. They finally heard of this particular name when they were asked around to Dong Da-qing's colleagues. They said that Dong Da-qing met this girl from a marriage matchmaking agency. I said it's a matchmaking agency, but it's more like a kiosk that gather information from people. As you know, back then the internet wasn't available to all. So there were two major ways to meet up someone that's not from your existing friend circles. One was public it to the newspapers saying that you were looking for friends or lovers, and the other method was to leave your information to one of those info kiosks locally, whether it's information about missing persons, lost and found, buying and selling houses, finding jobs or finding partners. You could do it through a information kiosk. You explained your needs clearly, paid some fee and left your contact information, then waited for them to push your information to the right people. There were 200 if no more info kiosks like that in Jiamusi City, and the police did visit each of them to gather the contacts. They eventually found it in an info kiosk that was specifically for matchmaking. According to the kiosk employees, they had a really vivid impression of this girl, Ren Xiu-e, because of her really tragic background. She says she had a really bad previous marriage in which she was super in love with her ex-husband, but she got kicked out of that little family of hers by her mother-in-law, all because she couldn't get pregnant. And she looked very pretty. You know, when a good-looking girl crying to tell you all about her miserable past, you'd probably have a deep impression of her and her stories. So I should dress up for my viewers to remember me, right? Let's go back to the story. So the people who worked in the specific info kiosk got empathized and wanted to meet it up with one of the hot choice when it comes to having relationships. That was Dong Da-qing. In a rather conservative era, people like him, tall, strong, and loyal, especially work as a policeman, for the government, which means he would have a stable income. In short, based on the descriptions of all the info kiosk staffs and Dong Da-qing's neighbors who had met Ren Xiu-e, the police drew up sketches of her and pasted her portraits all over Jiamusi City. Then many people came to the police saying that they had contacts with this Ren Xiu-e, though the police got nowhere, followed their leads. Until one day, there's this old lady reported to the police that this girl could have been from her village. Despite the police wasted a lot of efforts on false information, they still took this old lady seriously and actually discovered the real Ren Xiu-e with the help of her. The Ren Xiu-e they were looking for was using a fake name. Her real name was Ma Yanhong. Aged 28, she is from the countryside. She divorced her ex-husband in 1993 and left 2 of her kids to him. Then she moved to Jiamusi City alone. Her village fellows had various opinions on her. Some said she was very outgoing, lovely, talkative, and adorable. But some had the impression of her being sassy, fickle-minded, and untrustworthy. Now, the police really needed to dig out who was this Ma Yanhong, as when they paid visits to the village, Dong Daqing's father reported to the police that his son's passbook went missing. You know the suspicious elements. One, always the partner thing, and two, the money, appeared to be related to this Ma Yanhong. Knowing that she was his girlfriend and she must know about this passbook of Dong Daqing, the police bet she's the one who took it. And she would eventually withdraw money from this passbook, otherwise she wouldn't take it, right? The police organized a large number of personnel to scout near major banks in Jiamusi city. Fortunately, at that time, the banks opened in the city were not as numerous as now it is. Otherwise, relying on the police manpower would definitely not be enough to spot anyone, after all. There were no CCTVs in the past. Only half a month later, the police got Ma Yanhong from a bank. At first, she denied everything. Then she bursted out cries and claimed that she and Dong Daqing had been broke up and he gave her the passbook as a compensation. Basically, her saying kept changing and contradicting to herself. While the police didn't follow her chaotic logics, instead, they asked her about these remains of three people, a man, a woman, and a child from the beginning of the case. As from the police sign of will, they had already linked them all together since the remains were managed with similar manners. But as the police asked her about these three bodies, she knew it. She couldn't get away with this easily. So she confessed about everything. Ma Yanhong said she arrived in Jiamusi City in 1993 after her divorce. Then she rented a room in the countryside. Her landlord was Xu Xueli, who lived with his whole family, his wife and his kid. Then, of course, Ma Yanhong rented a room and moved in to live with them later. When people subconsciously think that women are the image of the weak, they can't help wondering if there's something wrong with this male landlord persecuting Ma Yanhong. Otherwise, how could an innocent girl commit heinous crimes like it? As statistically, most murderers are male, and within the minority of female homicide cases, the criminal characteristics are usually different from the males. Women are stronger endurance. Relatively speaking, they can vent out negative emotions in daily life, such as crying after a quarrel. Therefore, female criminals are less likely to commit passionate murders impulsively. When their endurance reaches the limit in vain, the homicide cases they committed are usually their loved ones. Like in this case I talk about, she killed her own mother with various reasons. Therefore, in general, women's murders often have very clear motives. However, that's not the case for Ma Yanhong. And on quite the contrary, the landlord and his family had been helping her and giving her supports. When Ma Yanhong rented the room, she told the landlord that her name was Wang Lan, and she was operating a restaurant with her ex-husband in her remote hometown. But when their life got only a teeny tiny bit better, her ex-husband cheated on her with one of the employees, so he divorced her and gave her nothing. She was coming to Jiamusi City alone, and she only just got a job working as a cashier in some random store to make a living. Hearing her tragic stories, the landlord couple reduced rent from 100 yuan to 50 per month, and they treated her pretty well. 25th of August 1994, it was a due date for rent. So the landlord paid a visit to Ma Yanhong, right? He knocked. When he opened the door, she looked sad and guilty, saying that her boss was out of the town and hadn't given her the salaries yet. So she couldn't pay the rent at time. Besides that, she couldn't even afford to buy food because her boss didn't pay her. Her tears streamed down as she talked to the landlord. Seeing the poor girl crying, of course the landlord wouldn't persist to collect the rent, and he even offered to lend her some money just so she could have her belly filled until she got paid from her work. so he took out those 2 notes, 100 yuan each, to give Ma Yanhong. But what he didn't know was that his kind gesture cost the life of his whole family. As Ma Yanhong noticed that those 200 yuan notes was pulled out from a really thick chunk of money that was rolled in her landlord's pocket. The total of that roll of money was about 5,000 yuan, if no more. According to the statistics released by the National Bureau of Statistics, the national average wage in 1994 was 1,942.7 yuan, and the national per capita disposable income of urban and rural residents in 1994 was 1,549 yuan. So on average, a person's monthly salary was only 161.89 yuan. It can be imagined that Ma Yanhong, seeing at least 5,000 yuan in cash at that time, would be very impressed. Well, the landlord and his family weren't too rich though. The reason why he had so many cash in hand was because he was about to take his whole family to visit their relatives in remote places. Therefore, they needed to cash out and prepared for the journey. And the landlord and his wife actually asked Wang Lan, fake names Ma Yanhong used with them, to look after their place right when they were out. Ma Yanhong, on the other hand, could only think of this thick stack of money in her landlord's pocket. So when they were about to take off the next day, the landlord's wife invited Ma Yanhong to drink dinner with them. Ma Yanhong was like, bingo, when she received the invitation for the dinner. Ma Yanhong brought up to the landlord's family, claiming that it was a pre-departure dinner, so they might as well use some liquors. So she left home and bought some drinks and beers along with some sleeping pills. On her way back, she smashed the sleeping pills and poured it into the beers. You know they use this type of beer cap. Ma Yanhong must have drank so many bottles of these to know the tricks to put some powders in it, but remain the cap as untouched. You know, just to lift a tiny bit of gap between the cap and the bottle. When she got back with dinner, she opened the bottle right in front of everyone and poured it to them. They were chatting and laughing until they were passed out. And yes, they let kids drink alcohols back then. Anyway, when they were all put down, Ma Yanhong got what she wanted, the cash, right? She can let her just walk away from all of these. As there was no CCTV at all, no one could catch her as she only been living in that neighborhood in a short amount of time. But what did she think? She said later in the interrogation that she found it awkward to leave them alive. While in her logic, she needed to confront the landlord's families when they were woke up, so might as well take their lives and she wouldn't need to face them anymore. So she took out a knife from the kitchen and swung it to their necks. And because Ma Yanhong felt that if she only beheaded the body, it would be too easily to be discovered, so she decided to take them apart. According to the neighbors, when the police were asking, they said they kept hearing these mincing machines throughout the night, that the day of the crimes. But what they thought was that this family must have been preparing for their next day journey, you know, to pack up some meat and stuff for the families for the following journey. And Ma Yanhong backed them and threw them randomly around the city by a bike. Then she used that deck of money to rent a much better place in the city center. You can see from now that she was this complete antisocial disorder type of psychopath. She was likable, good at taking advantages of others, habitually deceitful, extremely selfish, lacking in empathy, muddling through every day. And most importantly, she had a really clear logic when she did anything. It's just that her logics are pretty different and special. Since we, normal people, wouldn't kill to eliminate potential awkwardness. Anyway, Ma Yanhong started to enjoy her life. She frequently visited nightclubs and dated guys she met from the entertainment venues. She had really good time. But 5,000 yuan is much when she spent it lavishly. Then what did she do to make a living? Instead of getting a real job like most of us we do, she went to these info kiosks in 1995 and told them a miserable story about this divorced, poor woman, Ren Xiu'e, remember? From the beginning, and she was matched to Dong Daqing, the judicial police. Oh, that policeman loved her, adored her so much that they moved in together only after a couple of days. I bet she was different from many others back then in a conservative era. She was just too lively. Dong Daqing wanted to marry her badly, so he showed her his savings in this passbook. That was 20,000 yuan. You think she'd be happy to marry a somewhat rich guy? The 5,000 yuan she got from her previous landlord family lasted for only about half a year. Now she saw 20,000 yuan. That'd be 2 years of happy life of hers. She could only think of herself. So on the 2nd of June 1995, Ma Yanhong prepared a big dinner with her then fiancé, Dong Daqing. She cooked him his favorite dishes and bought some beers, yet again the beers. Her fiancé, of course, appreciated the effort for the dinner. He was chatting and laughing and drank all the beers she poured for him. As expected, he passed out, but when she just grabbed a knife from the kitchen, someone knocked. She opened the door with smiles on her face and ushered the man to their living room, provided him with teas and ashtrays. Then she kindly explained to the guest that her fiancé drank too much and already asleep. And their flat wasn't big, was it? The guest would see that Dong Daqing was crashing at the table and breathing in his good dreams, so he wouldn't stay and had to leave. Sending the guest away, her plan was interrupted. You think she would stop? No way. She picked up the knife and started to do whatever she was planning to. After she was arrested, Ma Yanhong confessed the reason why she wanted to finish Dong Daqing was that he worked in the police system. Quoted, "One day he would know the true me. I don't like that," unquoted. And she took the police to dig out all the heads she buried in various different locations in Jiamusi City, as she had confessed to the police with all the crimes she had done. There are sufficient witnesses and physical evidence, and the chain of evidence was complete, especially when the heads were all found. So her case was brought to the court. In court, she withdrew all her previous confession, alleging that her original confession was told under pressure. And her lawyer, she was assigned to a lawyer as well, raised doubts in court. As a woman, how could she harm a professional trained adult male all by herself? And how could she harm multiple people with 1 against 3? The defense also pointed out that according to the analyzed results of the leftover beers and liquor at the crime scene, the amount of drugs that Ma Yanhong took could not completely knock out an adult, and at most could only put someone into a half-asleep state. In that case, the probability of Ma Yanhong succeeding was extremely low. Moreover, even if she succeeded, there should have been signs of struggle at the crime scene. However, the investigation record of the crime scene did not record anything about it. Perhaps Ma Yanhong was not the only suspect in this case. But when the court asked Ma Yanhong about the other person, she denied it yet again, saying she acted alone. The court could not continue the trial in the face of major doubts, so the judge called for a pause to allow the prosecutors to find relevant evidence and also asked Ma Yanhong to clarify what does the alleged possible accomplice was. On the second trial, Ma Yanhong claimed there was this guy with a surname Wang had helped her with the crimes. In this trial, she stated very clearly her past with this person and details of their interactions and even the specific plans to split the loot. And the accomplice she mentioned was also a wanted fugitive for homicide. But there was a fatal flaw in her story. When this particular fugitive was wanted for the crime, Ma Yanhong had already been detained. She should find it difficult to get to know such a wanted fugitive criminal before the other party actually committed any other crimes, as what she claimed was that they met each other after he had committed this murder case. So that's not matching up to the situations. It's highly likely that this story was made up by her. However, without this alleged accomplice, Ma Yanhong's case couldn't continue and she didn't get her verdict until 1998. But to the end of 1998, on her third trial, Ma Yanhong was finally sentenced to death. The prosecutor presented evidence providing that Ma Yanhong could not describe the appearance of this alleged accomplice, and that the fugitive had already been proven not to be in the city when she committed the crimes. Although by the time she was sentenced, this alleged fugitive accomplice wasn't caught. She was executed on the 22nd of December 1998 at the age of 31. If we talk about statistics, it's commonly recognized that the number of female serial killers are less than male in history globally. And some tend to think that female killers won't be strong enough or cold enough to commit crimes involving body dismembering, especially with complicated managements. However, quite on the contrary, if she killed because of some negative emotional factors, she'd use the most bizarre way to deal with the bodies, like they dismember and chop it into small pieces, then cook them or fry them. These extreme ways of management are usually a way to vent out or unload emotions they felt for the victims. Alright folks, time for some venting session for myself. Sometimes I found the cases in China were a bit controversial as not all the evidence used in court were disclosed to the public. I can't find them anywhere. And sometimes I can't extend my speculations in depth because I am living in China. But I'd tried to give you all the details that were published publicly. I guess you'd have your own judgments about these cases. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you find my video is somewhat interesting. So I will see you in the next one.